today's episode, we have Mike Henry, who is the founder of BaliExpat.com. He is originally from Melbourne and is now retired in Bali with his family. Find out how he left his job through the amazing power of the internet and decided to live a global lifestyle. In this episode, we cover how he generated income while traveling around the world, the future of Bali including current problems and opportunities, the property market in Bali and how you can be a part of it, skills you can leverage to live a similar lifestyle, and much, much more. However, the audio was not crystal clear at some point, so please bear with us. Now, let's get on with the show. Schedule and coming into the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. So to get started off, we'll first cover your amazing backstory on how you got here in the first place and what decisions led you to actually leave Australia and pursue your life as an expat.
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, I went to university in Australia, and during my university studies, I first went on a homestay visit to Japan, and from that trip, I got really interested in just traveling overseas and different cultures. I'd never experienced that before. So I pretty much knew as soon as I finished studying university, I just wanted to travel. And I went back to Japan and I taught English there for a number of years. And then my degree was actually in computer science. So I wanted to shift my career back into like IT. So I worked in IT for a number of years, mostly just help desk, technical support, that type of thing in Australia and in Japan. And then while I was doing the help desk work, one time my boss needed someone to work on their company's intranet. So that's basically how I got involved in websites and just learning myself, basics like HTML and bit of programming and that kind of thing. Yeah, that was the first step, and I got interested, made my first website, and that's when Google AdSense was just becoming popular. So I was living in Tokyo, so I started it. Well, actually, I bought a website about Tokyo, and then it didn't have AdSense on it at the time. So not many people knew about AdSense then. So I basically could just buy the site, put AdSense on it, and I started making money from it. So, and then, once you make one site and then you learn about affiliate programs, just keep working that way. That's what I did. And I spent a bit more time in Japan. And then, one day someone said to me, well, you could run your website from anywhere. And I thought, yeah, why not? And that's basically what I did. I started traveling around Southeast Asia. And this is around 2006. I left my job then in Japan. So that name of digital nomad wasn't really popular, wasn't well known then. But I did belong to a forum. It was called Working Nomad. And I think that was kind of a bit of a precursor to the word digital nomad. And, there was you could get Wi-Fi anywhere, but there wasn't like things like you have now, like co-working spaces and all that kind of thing. So I think I was fairly at least one of the first people to be involved in that type of thing. But yeah, I basically traveled around, kept working on my websites, and then met my wife, and she's in Sumatra, which is sort of North Indonesia, part of Northern Indonesian island. And we got married and thought Bali would be a nice place to live. So we moved here. That's kind of how I got here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we've done quite a lot of things. My wife, she got involved in property, real estate, and I kept doing my websites. And then we bought a small guest house. That's where I am now. And we ran that for a while, and then we had children, and she went back to university, studied law. So she's become a lawyer now. Yeah, and we just keep doing whatever we can to earn money, make a business, support our family, and yeah.
That's awesome. So when you said you wanted to travel around the world, did you already have like a cushion of revenue streams, or did you just design it on the fly? Like as you went, you established them, or did you already have like a
Mm.
safety cushion with you?
Yeah, for sure. I had savings. And I did have some property in Australia, and got involved in property in New Zealand. So I had the savings for sure, and I had some income. And I mean, as you know, it's very cheap to live. I always traveled when I was living in Japan, just for like 1 or 2 weeks here and there. But I wanted to sort of do like an extended overland trip.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and I guess I was kind of really worried about spending too much money and whether my money would run out. So I did live very cheaply for quite a while, did the real backpacker thing. I guess I didn't really have to do that. I realize that now, but I mean, at the time, it's something I enjoyed doing. And yeah, I realized, I mean, it's not something easy to do. I mean, there's a lot more resources now about traveling, and there's a lot more places you can stay. But, at the time, Wi-Fi could be very spotty. So it wasn't easy to always be working like it is now. There wasn't like 4G networks and that type of thing. So, yeah. So safety net, I think, yeah, for sure. It's important to have that for sure. And you never know the ups and downs and like the situation now. I think most people realize you need to have a
It's more
cushion.
important.
You cannot rely on one income, especially like AdSense, like it does well for a while, and then it sort of just dropped off for me and never really done as well as like it did at the start. And you always have to be looking for different income streams, like an affiliate program could be doing well one time, and then for whatever reason that company can go bankrupt, or the owners stop running it, and you don't get paid and so on. So that there's always those risks, and there's never ever any guarantee that something will keep going on and on. So I think you always got to be aware of what's next. Something might be working well now, but in the future,
you gotta constantly upgrade yourself.
it not happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You cannot be complacent. I think that's the main thing. I mean, it happened to me. I think I got complacent for a while. When you're traveling around, you don't have and you've left a regular sort of 9-to-5 job. You need quite a lot of discipline. Otherwise, everyone else who's traveling, they might not be working, so they're having kind of like a party every night. So it's easy to get just part of that kind of group, and then you're not focused on working so much. So yeah, definitely you need some discipline.
Yeah. So you said you invested in property in Australia first. Do you still actively invest, or have you completely put that aside and moved on?
Yeah, we bought a property here in Indonesia. So we've focused on that. It's a small guest house. Initially it was only 4 rooms, and then we built additional rooms. And I mean, it was running very well for quite a while, but it's a very hands-on business, compared to online businesses. Like I made the website, and I enjoyed getting the clients through, different marketing, SEO and that type of thing. but then guests come, you can get staff and whatever, but the guests want to meet you, they want to speak to you. So it's fun. That's when I was traveling, probably like in a lot of people, you think, oh, and you stay at different guest houses, you think, oh, well, one day it would be nice to have a business like that. And that's what I thought. And for sure, the first few years were quite good, but in Bali, we've had a lot of, now we have the COVID situation where we just decided to close the whole down. We had the volcano, and then we had the earthquake, Lombok, terrorists and a few earthquakes and so on. So we've never been hit, but, like every time something like that happens, your guests stop coming. So it's like I mentioned before, you can't rely on one thing, and definitely tourism business is very tricky, and that's why I prefer to go back into sort of the online things, business where, it's a little bit more predictable.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually found one of your articles, 2011, where you said your dream was to own a guest house, which you obviously do now, which is pretty great. And
well, like you travel around Southeast Asia, you meet a lot of people, and you meet like foreigners, expats. They got married to a local, and that's one business they start, either a restaurant or a guest house. But it's not, after a while, I mean, you're working at a job, one thing you can always do is quit and go start another job. But if you have a business, unless it's easy to sell, you kind of, you're just stuck with it. So, and the situation, the property market isn't so great here. We live in the north of Bali, which isn't as popular as, say, like Canggu and Ubud. So the property market is a bit more difficult here to sell property. So you have your dream of starting, but you also if you want to move on, that's not easy either. So
yeah, that's true. And so with this current situation, how are you how are you finding guests and keeping your guest houses going?
Well, my wife is, we live on the property, and we have, just by chance, we had my mother-in-law staying, and so she's from North Sumatra, so she couldn't go back. So, like she's older, and if she has some health problems, so we can't really take any risk with having someone infected come. So was just too many issues, like someone comes and then you need to clean up afterwards. And my wife didn't want to take the risk. And, because we have our house there on the property, and what kind of reception area is actually the front of our house. So people coming in all the time, my wife didn't want to deal with that. So we decided to take a break from it. So, I mean, there's some places still open, but my wife's very risk averse.
Even if it's open, I think there's not many guests at the moment. I was talking to my driver who took us around last time, and he was like, for 3 months he hasn't had any guests book him. So that was pretty sad.
Yeah, because people can't come in. So the guests that are here now, they're basically living here. So
yeah, pretty much. So where do you, like, as you live in Lovina, is it your villa? Okay, so I've like, from what I know, like south of Bali was like way too popular, and I honestly feel like North Bali is underrated. I think it has a lot of gems to offer. Do you think it could have an effect, like the property prices could have an effect in the future, just as the south, in the north as well?
They're planning, they've been talking about it for years, but to build an airport in the north, because yeah, the government sees that sort of imbalance between the north and the south. So they have this huge plan to build a big airport here, but I think it'll be years before that gets underway. Because the sea there's no surf, that puts people off. People who like to surf, they're obviously not interested to come. And the beaches that have a black sand, volcanic sand, so it's not that kind of yellow golden sand like beaches in the south. So that puts some people off. And there's a lot of trash, problems with pollution and that. So, and the locals here, because there's less tourism, then they're a bit more desperate. So they kind of a bit more pushy to people. So
Yeah.
people tend to love it or hate it. It's very,
Yeah.
Whereas say Ubud, most people like Ubud or anywhere in the south, people tend to like those areas, but Lobina is kind of a very love or hate relationship. Some expats come, they love it, and they move here. And there's a big more Europeans, Dutch, German community than anything here.
Yeah. My favorite parts from North Bali were near Aling Aling Falls and that cluster of place where there were heaps of waterfalls.
Well, that's Bulalang.
Bulalang, that's I think that's very underrated. Compared to the beaches, I think that's very underrated.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of the drive. It takes 2 or 3 hours to drive here, so that's can put people up too.
Yeah, it's a very hard drive too, because roads are very windy.
Windy,
yeah. So where do you see the future of Bali in terms of like economically and socially? Like we'll start off with the social future of Bali in social aspects first.
Well, I think the big problem that Bali faces is that almost most of their economy is dependent on tourism, and every time there's a volcanic eruption, earthquake, and now the COVID situation, means no one else has any other work, because they're relying on tourism too much, building hotels. And then you have people they buy a car and they want to become a driver guide, and that's all they're focused on. So there's no, like back to my story, I was trying to diversify my income, and then unfortunately they cannot do that here. And, Bali had a long kind of history with arts and crafts, and younger people aren't doing that. They're not involved with that as much anymore. So I think that's a shame. A lot of young people, one of the options to make money is to work on a cruise ship. And that industry has been decimated, so they would sometimes get into a lot of debt to take these courses to work on the cruise ship, and then they go overseas, work on the cruise ship. For them it's a huge amount of money, maybe $1,000, or if they goes up to say $2,000 a month, and then they save all their money and they work basically like 6 months, 8 months straight, and then they come back and they build a house or they buy a car and then they become a driver. Or they start a restaurant. So all their ideas are related to tourism. So like now, one way people are trying to survive is by making some kind of food product. So harvesting some local produce and then selling different foods, and then they try to sell it online. So, I mean, people can adapt to different industries, but I mean, there's got to be some kind of backup plan. I don't know what it can be, but maybe it's arts and crafts, food production, or something that's not 90% dependent on tourism. So, and then because people building all these hotels, and then I think the initial draw card of coming to Bali will lose, like the rice fields, in this picture behind me, people building hotels and houses on rice field. There will be nothing left for people to see. The attraction that, people, or the image people have of Bali is definitely disappearing. So that's a huge problem too.
Right.
Yeah, if that answers the question.
Yep. Oh, yeah. That's a very good answer. So, do you see any changes in the attitude of like young people? How they're like, I'm sure they like realize that Bali like has like limited opportunity just because it's over dependent on tourism. Do you think they're diversifying and exploring new ideas or business opportunities?
I don't think young people are enough, and I don't think there are the people who should be giving them options. They're not, whether it's parents or the government. They're saying they're encouraging foreigners to come here, or foreigners or anyone like from other parts of Indonesia, to build hotels. And then they think our village will have a hotel in our village, and then the people can come and work there. And even around me, they keep building new hotels, and there's too many hotels, and cannot sustain the levels of tourism even when it's busy. So unfortunately, they're not seeking any other forms of income. And people going to work overseas, the cruise ship, that's another source potential, but like exporting labor, and then they send money back and so forth. But even that's involved in tourism again. So either cruise ships, or a lot of girls work in massage and that type of thing overseas. So, and then they save money, which is good. And then they come back and buy a house. But what do? They open a restaurant or start a guest house themselves. So it's kind of a revolving thing. They're not thinking, well, what else can we do? Which is a shame. But
so,
I think maybe digital online things, that's a huge potential. But is the government pushing for that? No, I don't think so. Not like, say, the Philippines, where they have their call centers, and I think India, where they have doing software development. There's the potential is there for sure, because you have these digital nomads coming here. Some will employ Indonesian locals, and there are definitely the people that have skills, web design skills and so on, but no one's really saying, oh, this is something we should really focus on. And then like universities and so on. And the other problem is English. The people who could potentially work in those industries, they need to have, high level of English, where say like countries like Philippines and India, I think Indonesia misses out in that regard because of the language difference. Yeah.
So as you said, like a lot of foreigners invest in villas in Bali. Do you think it's overrated, or is there still opportunity to invest for foreigners who are seeking to invest?
Well, I would like to see foreigners invest, but not think of new projects. There's a lot of hotels that are like underdeveloped, or they've started 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and they've become run down. It would be better if foreigners came in and bought up the existing hotels and then develop that, rather than building I keep seeing all these brand new, like building on Ricefield, when there's older hotels for sale. I think people want to have, even for houses, they want to have their own dream villa. They have some image in their mind of what they want to go to an architect, and then they see an area with a Ricefield view. They build there, rather than, there's a lot of property that's dormant, needs to be sold. So I would like to encourage, if foreigners want to invest in Bali, please don't build on Ricefield. Don't buy Ricefield land, and look at what's there. Maybe it's not your style, but you can renovate. You can build your own dream villa on properties that's existing. I think that's invest, come to Bali, invest, but don't, no one's really saying, well, I guess people are saying, yeah, because the whole, if people build on the attraction that people have to come to Bali, then there'll be nothing for people to come and see. So if anyone has that, can take away that message, I think that would be
That
good.
would be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from what I understand, I think everything starts from the intention of the government, like or whatever that people decide, either from whatever way, it just goes back into the tourism industry. There's no diversification from the government itself,
Yeah.
so then people can't really
Yeah.
diversify. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the people at the top, like Indonesia's, to get to the top of anything, you need to have money. You need to spend money. So people, when they get to the top, they need to recoup their investment.
uh,
So to speak. So, if someone becomes a head of a village or whatever, and then someone comes here and says, I want to invest in it and build a hotel here, they say,
yeah.
sure. But, there's a price,
Yeah.
exactly. So how to stop that? That's kind of the question, how to stop that. There's some green zones and so on, but, it's not enforced. And when there's weak legal system, weak enforcement, then there's no way to stop it.
Yeah. So apart from your online business, blogging, law consulting, do you have any other future projects for yourself that you've planned?
Well, I'm starting, because I started this Bali expat focus website, I'm thinking to have a global website, global expat website.
Yeah.
So that's what I've just started working on. And yeah, it's sort of, I've just been interested in expat kind of lifestyle for whatever reason. And I'm really interested to learn about different countries, and not say from the tourism aspect, but like living there. For whatever reason, I like learning about visas and finding work and all that kind of thing. So it's a topic I like. And even though I'm not maybe moving around, maybe I will again in the future, but that's why I decided to start this website, because I lived in Japan, I lived in Indonesia now, and I've spent some time in China and so forth. So I just like learning about different countries. So that's why I've decided to make a global website. I mean, there's a few already exist, so it's not like a new idea, but this is something I wanted to develop. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'll be a really great idea, especially with the trends changing now. Everyone's gonna focus on, because you have work from home, you can literally work from anywhere now. Yeah, that'll
Yeah, I
be
mean,
pretty
there's
good.
that aspect. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, but traditionally, like companies sending people to overseas, that real, they get a high salary and then they go work in Shanghai or Hong Kong and they get a big salary and the company pays for their kids' education. Well, I think that's sort of disappearing. Yeah, but there's
Yeah.
probably the other aspect where people can, if they have an income from one source, they can, live in another just location. So I guess it's just a play of words. People say digital nomad, maybe older people say expat,
Yeah.
Whereas,
Yeah.
but
It's
in a
actually
way, it's the same thing.
same thing.
It's the
Yeah.
same
I never,
thing.
I never thought of that. Yeah. It's the same thing, to be honest. Soon it'll be
Yeah,
just the normal. Yeah. I feel like it'll be just normal
I
going
think
forward.
so. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and like, unfortunately, expat usually means white person from a rich country going to a poor, not always poor, but then you have someone from a poor country going to a wealthier country. They're not an expat; they're they call them an immigrant,
Oh,
which
yeah.
which is not nice either.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's another topic.
No, that's yeah, that's true. That made me think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that kind of whole niche thing, that's kind of what I want to focus on for now. Yeah.
Yeah. So going
Yeah.
forward, for what business opportunities do you see for people, say in their 20s, 30s, who want to live a global lifestyle?
what opportunities people have.
Yeah, in Bali or anywhere else, anywhere, because as you said, you're more interested in like global opportunities. So where do you see the most growth and most opportunity in the coming decade?
I think, as you said, people can work anywhere. So one thing I see is homeschooling. You know, I have children and now they can't go to school. So we're teaching them from home. Um, they're still enrolled in the school and the school gives them homework, but it's not so much. And because we're home, we're spending time with the kids. So that would that is huge, homeschooling, and then you need obviously curriculum. I mean, I think this situation, parents are realizing, hey, maybe that my kids don't need to go to school, and maybe schools are even going to say, hey, we don't need all these buildings and infrastructure. You know, we just need a good internet connection. You know, so that's going to change. And I've been sort of looking at what other schools are available. You know, you need to just being like an entrepreneur to homeschool. People maybe don't realize you need discipline yourself. You need to be disciplined to teach your children, because it's not easy. It's not like you can say to your son or daughter, hey, just work on this. I'm going out to the shops now and come back and it's done. No, you got to spend a lot of time with them. And one thing I'm trying to get my son to do is do Udemy courses that he's interested in and try so he can do a course, but he can learn how to learn. You know, if he's interested in a particular topic, he can go learn himself. So I think that's definitely in the future, and that's going to apply to universities and so on. And then I'm not interested in gaming, video gaming, but my son is, and, he watches videos on YouTube and they put it up in a few hours that have 2 million views.
Yeah.
It's just someone playing a game. And, an SEO video put out by a well-regarded person maybe get a couple of thousand views, and you have kids playing games, they got millions of views. So,
That's true.
It doesn't, it's crazy. That's been a nice thing to have children, you see from their perspective. And then, an older person, you get sort of set in your ways and you don't sort of look at different emerging trends and things. So there's a huge amount of opportunity. So I don't know, I can't say for every possible thing, but homeschooling is one. Video games, another one, entertainment, that type of thing. And it's unlimited, really, the opportunities that, my kids have now that weren't available to like you and me.
Yeah.
So I think to embrace those things. Yeah.
Definitely. So what were some of the, as you said, like now there's so much opportunity. So back when you started 2006, what were some of the biggest challenges you had and how did you overcome them?
Well, I was working in a job and I would just sort of come home and then work on my websites. And I guess but I wasn't married, didn't have kids. So, and there was a lot of working in Japan. There's a lot of social activity. So after work, drinking and so forth. So, but it's something that I really loved doing. I couldn't wait to get home and I'd work on that. I didn't watch TV or whatever. I just work on that. And I guess, initially was just knowing what to do. There's so much more information available now. But just trying everything, I think that's the only thing you can do. Things like SEO, you can only learn by trying. You can do a course which gives the basics, but then you need to actually apply it to whatever website or niche that you're working on. Having a job was a challenge, finding time, but also if you remove that job, you can also become undisciplined. So that was
Yeah.
when I quit my job. I thought, well, now I have 10 hours to work on my websites, and that it doesn't happen that way. Um, so definitely the challenge in the beginning for me was being disciplined to actually do work, and actually having a job was actually gave me more discipline and focus because I only had a few hours every day. So you need to like push yourself a little bit to wake up early and do some work, and not going out partying every night, and spending every day traveling and being a tourist and that type of thing. So um, definitely discipline in the beginning, the biggest challenge. Yeah, I think.
Right. Um, just out of curiosity, how's investing in equity markets in Bali and Indonesia? Is it very famous, or do people do it in Bali commonly?
Well, from what I have never tried, and I'm reluctant to try, and from my understanding is because of, you have Indonesia itself has very weak enforcement of laws, and it's very, from what I understand of what I've heard, not my personal experience. There's people, there's a lot of market manipulation. So
Yeah.
um, it's probably the worst thing you can get into
Yeah.
if you don't have the knowledge,
Yeah.
because in Indonesia, the wealth divide is massive. So the people at the top, they have huge amounts of wealth, and it just makes sense they that they can do basically what they want.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like things like, what do you call it? Um, Insider trading or insider knowledge. That even that concept probably doesn't even exist in like
Yeah.
countries like Indonesia, I think, whereas
Yeah.
that's
It's
probably encouraged, or, to find out any insider
yeah.
information.
Yeah. That's probably
So
normal over there.
yeah, it's all backroom deals and so on,
Mm.
and, my wife's a lawyer here, so I experienced firsthand of how things sort of operate in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah. But what if someone who invests in like global markets settle in Bali? Would that mean
Yep.
they still have to pay tax on their revenue? Is it if they live in Bali and they earn US dollars from investing in US stocks? How does that work? Is there any regulations for that, or do you think people can still do it?
Well, there's like a tax rule. If you spend more than 180 something days in Indonesia, then your global income is
Right.
taxable.
Okay.
So if you have a lot of, you know, um, global income, then I guess, I mean, people come here for short periods. They work like, like fly in, fly out workers. They work in the mines in Australia, and then they come here in Bali, like say on a tourist visa. So they're only spending short times here. So um, they're not a tax resident in Indonesia. So there's the number of days, and that's one thing. And at the moment, there's nothing. It's changing, but there's no system for the government to check. There's not the information technology systems aren't available like in other countries. So it's only really developing in that regard. Like who owns what property, like checking bank accounts and all that type of thing. So that's only very and probably one thing, there's corruption and there's a lot of money floating around the system, and I don't want to say too many bad things, but when you have a government of lax banking system, they're not going to have the motivation themselves to um, pushed down
Yeah.
to enforce those things. And that's probably like, I think you might be aware, foreigners cannot legally buy properties in Indonesia. But what a lot of foreigners do, they come here and they use what they call a nominee. So they use an Indonesian person's name,
Right.
put the property in their name, and then they live or they rent out the property. So who owns what? So then they put it on Airbnb, they start making money. Well, for sure, that local person is liable for the taxes, right? But because that foreigner cannot own property in Indonesia, what's his position,
Yeah.
legally, and, maybe he has obligations in your own country, and it's not in your name, that's, I guess a gray area. And there's a lot of problems in that regard. And they're trying to, a couple of years ago, they had what we call a tax amnesty, where all Indonesians had to declare all the property and assets they own. And they had an amnesty. So, and you had people, lawyers and notaries they had, I don't know, maybe possibly even hundreds of properties in their name, all owned by foreigners, and they had to declare all that, and they had to pay tax on, say, like, because basically the government's saying, well, you own $1 million property, you had no way to earn that income. Okay, you need to pay how you bought that. So that's what they had, an amnesty. They made people pay, and if it was a nominee situation, the foreigners had to pay the local so that they could pay the tax office and so on. So yeah, it's beginning, but it's still taking time.
Yeah.
So there's the rules, and then whether the rules are enforced or not, that's another thing.
Right. Okay. So finishing up, what do you love about Bali? What blows your mind about Bali?
Well, I like the warm weather. That's always, I've enjoyed the warm tropical weather. When I had time off, when I was working like in Japan, Japan has really cold winters, and I would always go to Southeast Asia because of the warm weather. And I feel kind of more like alive. I like wearing t-shirts. I like wearing shorts every day. I don't like having to wear warm clothes. So part of me is I just like Southeast Asia and the food, the different cultures. And yeah, my wife's from Sumatra, which is nice too. But Bali has a kind of nice mix between, if other parts of Indonesia, foreigners, it's rarer to see them. So you kind of draw a bit of attention, whereas in Bali, like, there's so many foreigners around you, you have a nice, you don't stand out, and there's nice restaurants and food and different facilities, so if you like, even though you like Indonesian food, you can still have, like nice pizza and that type of thing too. And I think just the culture of Bali is fascinating. And I mean, always something new, something happening, different ceremonies taking place every day, going around you. We're not Hindu, so we don't participate in those, but we do follow. You have to follow certain ceremonies for your house. So that's always interesting. So it feels like something's always happening. There's no Monday, today's Monday, do this, or it doesn't really matter. Days of week don't really matter so much. And yeah, it's just a nice, easygoing lifestyle because it's like a tourist holiday destination, feels laid back. You meet other foreigners, you meet tourists, you meet other expats. It's easy to meet people and just feels a relaxed way of living. It doesn't feel so stressful. The cost of living is fairly low, so that, you can come here and try to start a business, and it's not like trying to start it in Japan or in Tokyo, where you have to pay thousands of dollars a month thousands of dollars every month just for the rent,
Yeah.
So you can rent a place here and have a nice, I think that's attraction for a lot of people coming to start businesses, online businesses, that it's fairly affordable. And I mean, the internet was a big problem before, but that's getting much better. Yeah. So,
Nice. That's awesome. That's great to hear.
yeah.
So before we close out, do you have any final words or final comments to add on for especially
About anything particular in Bali or online
especially
business?
targeted on people who want to live as an expat in Bali, who want to pretty much develop their business in Bali, start a business in Bali, pretty much.
Okay, so yeah, well, there's the online side. So you come to Bali, you have your business in another country, and then you come to Bali and you work remotely, I guess, on that business. That's one aspect. Or you can come here and start your own business, and then you can earn income in Indonesia. So there's definitely a distinct decision people need to make. And most people come where they've got an income from overseas, or the developing one, so they come here and they make money that way. And then they think, oh, maybe this opportunity would be nice, say like a yoga studio, a guest house, a villa, and then they start that way. And definitely you want to be living here for a while before you make any investment, if at all.
Yeah.
You make an investment. You don't don't look for properties online and then come here. You got to have the runway, it's got to be at least a year. Too many people come here, they buy something straight away, and then they make a really bad decision. It could be a property that had problems that they had no idea about. They meet agents who don't tell them all the information. They don't do due diligence on the property. So my wife has a due diligence service, and almost every property she's checked has had problems. They couldn't build on it. They couldn't get licenses. Had different problems, like it's in a green zone, so you can't build on it, and doesn't even have an access road. So the seller might say, oh yeah, you can just use my brother's land to get access. But what happens? The brother have an argument, and then he'll say, put up a wall and say, no, you can't use my road anymore. It sounds easy and wouldn't happen in Australia, right? But it happens all the time here. So you got to do the due diligence. Definitely come here and get the lay of the land before you make any substantial investment. You need to follow the rules, because say if it's one thing to come here, you have a business overseas, but say like you have a web design business, and you start trying to get customers in Indonesia, but you don't have an actual company here. Well, photography business is another one. I'm strict about that, and they actively search out foreigners here, and the foreigner who gets all the legal, starts a business here, gets all the legal visas, and it costs quite a bit of money. There's a lot of investment. If they see someone freelancing, then they will report that person to immigration, and that happens regularly. And then you can go to, they have a jail, and then what happens? You will have to pay probably a lot of money to get these, and then you'll maybe get blacklisted to come back here. So it's not, you got to make the decision what you want to do, because digital nomads the government seems to be fairly open about, they don't say you can do it, they do not say this is legal, but they allow it to happen. If you understand what I
Yeah,
mean by
yeah,
that.
definitely.
I think it's like in a lot of countries, there's no like digital nomad visa or so on. And
Yeah.
I mean, they're fairly open now with people getting like social, they call social visa, where the visa's for supposedly for people visiting friends and family in Indonesia. But many digital nomads will use that visa to live here. So technically, they shouldn't be using that visa. Technically, the only visa you can work in Indonesia is a working visa. So
Okay.
anything other than that, you really are breaking the law, and it's a real grey area whether, say, you get your money from overseas, but you live in Indonesia or Bali, that whether that's legal or not. And I wrote a blog post about that, and people say it's fine, other people say it's not possible, and then but you cannot go to the immigration and ask, can I do this? Because I'm sure they're going to say, no, you can't do that. You have to start a company. You have to get a working visa. I mean, that's the only thing that they can say. They can't say, oh, yeah, just work on a tourist visa and go to Singapore every 6 months and, get a new visa. I
Yeah.
mean, like every country, Indonesia's starting to like talking about taxes, and that like Netflix, they're operating in Indonesia and they're not paying any taxes. So
Yes.
they want them to make an office here. And the same with like companies like booking.com and hotel
Mm.
agencies. Um yeah, and it's for sure it's unfair to, I think, to the country that these companies can operate here and they make money here, but they're not paying their
Paying
fair
tax.
share too. So yeah. So
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah. And
especially when it's like hotels and that. Yeah. And then what the tax have said to hotels is that they say you should be paying their tax. So you pay 10% commission to, say, booking.com, or if it's even more than that, then you should be paying a percentage on top of that. That's what the
yeah.
tax department is saying to hotels. So in my mind, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if the
So
yeah. I mean, if the
yeah,
companies, I'm pretty sure like Booking.com, Airbnb, they make like a bulk of their money from Southeast Asian countries who end up with
for
nothing
sure. Yeah.
from them. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's only fair
Yeah.
to give them at least
Mm.
a bit of tax.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know why they don't enforce it more. Like
Yeah.
Airbnb is another one. That's huge here. I think it was one of the top Airbnb places at one stage. I don't know how they judged it, but I don't know, per capita or something. But there was an article. It was one of the best places to have an Airbnb. So that draws
Oh,
people in, foreigners to
yeah.
come. They are here on holiday and they think, hey, why not? I buy a villa. I can stay here, my holiday, and then I can rent it out on Airbnb, make money. So that's a whole also gray area. You need licenses to do it legally. People do it legally, and then there's a lot of people that do it illegally, under the table. So there's and it goes back to enforcement and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's taking it some time, but maybe eventually the government will crack down more on it. They keep saying they will, but um, as I said before, there's too many people involved in all this kind of they're in the people who should be making the laws and doing enforcement, they're involved in it themselves.
Yeah.
there's a little motivation to like really step down on it, yeah, crack down on it.
Understand. Yeah, that's a really good point. So yeah, where can people find you? Where can people reach out to you, and what can they expect from you?
Well, yeah, I have a website, baliexpat.com. I've been running it for over 10 years, so my interest in the site has sort of gone up and down, and I have a couple of ebooks for sale. There's a link to my wife's website. She's balilawyer.net, and she helps foreigners start businesses here. As I said, property due diligence and that type of thing. And she either helps people before they get involved, or she helps people after
Yeah.
who don't do all the checks. Yeah. So the smart people who, some people though, they don't want to pay the money.
Yeah.
In the end, some reason they can spend, they don't see to invest $200,000 in a property, but they say, I can't afford to pay a legal fee to do due diligence, and there was one case where someone was going to buy a property from someone they didn't even actually own. Oh, they were going to lease it, right? Do a long-term
Okay.
lease. And that person only had a 1-year lease. And he
Right.
said he was going to pay them, the owner, back every year. But like he might do it 1 year. After that, he's gone,
Yeah.
And that person, oh, he's a nice person. He's really kind to me, drives me around and so on, and where people wouldn't do that in their own country, that somehow they come here and they do it. They don't see, they lose sort of their common sense. So definitely get it all checked out beforehand.
I think, especially in Bali, like you said, because of all the taxes, regulations, I think due diligence is more important than in a developed country.
If you're new to the country, you don't know about certain things. And even local people, they're not buying and selling property all the time. They may not check it. They're not, it's easy to say, well, they speak the language, but you go to a notary's office to have a meeting to sign a property. Like one case, the seller in the notary's office, they left off a 0 in the contract. The seller signed all the documents, and the buyer had worked somehow with the notary, and they left off a 0. Sounds great, but you're in the office. You think you're selling your house, and you're so happy you're going to get your money. They left off a 0, so they got less money, right? And of course, wrong. But then they had to go through the court. They had to spend more money over how many years to try and win the case. It's just, it sounds ridiculous, but these things happen all the time, and you got to get it checked out. So many, unfortunately, many scams, and that's why one thing me and my wife like to help people is because we don't want to see people scam. We don't want to people have a bad impression of Indonesia, and I think anywhere in the world has these scams, but unfortunately, like, people come to Bali and they have sort of rose-colored glasses, and then they're wide open to mistakes, and they do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do in their own country, which is a shame. Relationships, that's another whole thing. A whole nother podcast probably. And I'm starting another website, expat.com. So that's the sort of more global website that I'm thinking of starting. So I mean, it's not a new area of nothing like groundbreaking technology wise, but hopefully have a different angle to living overseas. And like Facebook, obviously most people like using Facebook and that for getting information about living overseas. So that's definitely been a change from what I was used to when I started out, like forums and stuff. Now people always Facebook groups and so on. So that's sort of a challenge, starting your own business in that niche.
I think your Facebook group has a lot of followers as well. It's big.
I had a big community. I had a few different I have a few different ones, and they're time consuming and can have problems, but they can also lead to other opportunities too. So if you like the community, you like the people, then I had a digital nomad one, and someone else was interested in that, so they took over it. And so they do have, they sounds weird, but they are an asset. Whereas where like a website was, before people bought and sold websites, but if you develop a community, that is potentially is an asset too. And I don't know what legally with Facebook, I'm sure they might not agree with that, but I mean, you, like anything, if you don't own something, you can get shut down overnight. You don't own a Facebook group, so in that regard, it's not yours, right? Whereas say like a website or something, you can say, well, that's actually mine, legally mine. Yeah.
I'll let you go have your lunch now, because I think we went over a bit.
Yeah. Thanks. Great to meet you, and stay in touch.
Likewise.
Hopefully,
thank you for your time.
If I get a podcast going, I can talk to you, interview you.
Yeah, of course. And when I come to Bali next, I'll be sure to visit you as well.
Yeah, definitely come up the north and come and visit us.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time, Mike. Thank
you.
Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new from this episode. If you did, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you know anyone who'd benefit from the content we covered today, make sure you share it with them and add some value to their life. Have a blessed day and take care.